Hundreds of farmers in Arkansas gathered at a town hall last week to ask Congress for help. Mounting debt, aging equipment, and disappearing profits are making it nearly impossible for them to break even, let alone to turn a profit. One of those farmers calls the president's tariffs, quote, the ice cream on top of a cake of a perfect...
...of soybeans in every field in the entire United States of America has to go abroad. China is the largest importer of soybeans in the world. They import 61% of the world's market. Last year, we sent around $12 billion, I think $14 billion worth of soybeans the year before. For the first time in 20 years, China's bought zero soybeans and zero new crop corn out of this country.
Zero?
So we went from 12 billion to zero.
Where are they buying the soybeans?
Brazil. You see, we lost 42% of our market share in the first tariff war. In Trump's first tariff war, the Chinese went to buying their soybeans from Brazil. They invested billions of dollars in Brazilian infrastructure. They have moved into Africa, and they're going to commercially farm in Africa. Since we left with USAID, they moved their Belt and Road program into Africa. So,
asking over 1,000 farmers, do you think the U.S. is on the brink of a farm crisis? And you can see the results on your screen, with 46% saying yes, 33% saying it may be in crisis. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, it's clear the financials are weighing on producers' minds.
Yeah, that's true, Clinton, especially with cash corn prices under $4 in many areas of the Corn Belt and high input costs. And if you look deeper at NCGA's data, it's even more alarming, as more than 3/4 of U.S. corn growers are concerned about financial collapse. Now, while they say it isn't to the level of the 1980s farm crisis, it could quickly get to that level without a major jolt in demand. A survey of over 1,000 corn growers nationwide shows the economic problems they're facing are serious. Nearly 80% indicate they believe the farm economy is or may be in crisis.
I mean, right now, agriculture is just in a bad situation, a bad time.
In fact, 65% of corn growers surveyed say they're more concerned about their farm financials now than they were a year ago.
Is the loss per acre for an acre of corn is in that 180 to 190 range. I mean, when you start looking at input costs, fertilizer, chemicals, seed, and then there is no place to go right now with the prices. We need to have higher markets.
America was once the world's agricultural giant, the nation that fed continents. But today, something has changed. Quietly, slowly, and dangerously. Across the United States, farms are closing at the fastest rate in modern history. The land is drying. The soil is weakening. Farmers are aging out. And the next generation isn't stepping in. For the first time in decades, America is importing more food than it produces in several key categories. A country that once called itself the breadbasket of the world is now struggling to feed itself. But this story doesn't end with America's collapse. Because while Washington is losing control of its farming system, Africa is rising faster than anyone expected. And this is the part no one in the West wants to talk about. Right now, the average American farmer is 58 years old. Young people aren't replacing them. Rural towns are shrinking. And over 100,000 farms have disappeared in the last few years alone. Corporate farming giants are buying everything: land, equipment, seed, rights, water usage. Independent farmers? They can't compete. And the result is catastrophic. Because America's farming power was built on millions of small farms working together. When that system breaks, the entire food chain breaks with it. Add extreme heat, wildfires, water shortages, and collapsing soil into the mix, and you get what analysts now call the silent food crisis of America. Here's the terrifying part. The U.S. now depends on foreign nations for things it used to dominate, including fruits, vegetables, grains, and fertilizers. The country that once supplied the world is now forced to import what it used to export. And Washington knows what this means. Less control, less leverage, less power. While America was busy dealing with internal collapse, Africa was doing the opposite. Nations across the continent started expanding farmland, attracting major agricultural investment, developing new irrigation systems, building fertilizer plants, launching Africa-to-Africa food trade, and negotiating global supply deals. Countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Morocco, Ethiopia, Ghana, Rwanda, Tanzania have produced the fastest agricultural expansion the world has seen in decades. Africa now controls 60% of the world's remaining arable land, and this time, Africa is using it strategically. And for the first time in modern history, Africa is turning America's weakness into its advantage. America's farming collapse didn't just weaken the U.S. food system. It opened doors that Africa had been locked out of for decades. And African nations wasted no time. As American production dropped, global buyers needed new suppliers. And African nations stepped in. Countries like Zambia, South Africa, Egypt, and Senegal saw massive spikes in agricultural exports. Everything from wheat and corn to vegetables, tea, fish, fruit, and livestock. For the first time, African food exports began replacing U.S. products in the Middle East, Europe, Asia, South America. Washington didn't expect this, but global markets simply followed the supply, and Africa provided it. Africa is no longer the future potential. It is becoming the present-day food engine. New megafarms are rising. Irrigation projects are expanding. Local fertilizer plants are reducing import costs. Innovative tech farms are growing food faster and cleaner than the U.S. system. And the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, opened a 1.3 billion person market, creating the largest food trade zone on Earth. While America's farmland shrinks, Africa's farmland is exploding in value. Washington is frustrated. European nations are shocked. And global analysts admit what they ignored for years. Africa is on track to becoming the world's food powerhouse. Not America, not Europe, Africa. The global food balance has shifted, and it happened right when America needed control the most. So what happens next? Africa gains leverage. Africa gains negotiating power. Africa gains investment control. Africa gains export dominance. Food is not just a commodity, it is power. And for the first time in modern geopolitics, Africa is holding that power. America's farming system is collapsing, and Africa isn't just surviving. Africa is taking advantage and taking the lead. The collapse of America's farming system was only the beginning. Africa's rise was the second chapter. But now, the world is entering the third and most dangerous phase, the global aftermath. Because when a superpower loses control of its food system, and another continent rises to take its place, the balance of global power changes permanently. This is the story of what happens next. As African nations grow stronger in food production, countries around the world face a difficult question. Who supplies their food in the future? America or Africa? For decades, the answer was automatic, America. But today, Europe is negotiating new food and fertilizer deals with African nations. Asia is expanding its import pipelines from West and East Africa. And the Middle East, once heavily dependent on American grain, is now signing long-term agricultural agreements across the African continent. Global buyers aren't loyal to America anymore. They follow whoever can provide consistent supply. And right now, that supplier is Africa. This shift isn't symbolic. It's economic, diplomatic, and strategic. It determines alliances. It determines priorities. It determines influence. And the West is watching all of this with growing anxiety. Washington tried to respond. New farm subsidies, emergency water funding, attempts to revive rural towns, billions in agricultural rescue packages. But none of this solved the real issue. America's farming system is structurally broken. Too much land is owned by corporations. Too many farmers are retiring. Too much soil has been destroyed. Too much dependency exists on foreign fertilizers and imports. The U.S. can't rebuild what it lost, not fast enough, not at scale. Meanwhile, African nations are doubling, even tripling their output. Some countries are increasing yields faster than the U.S. did in its entire boom era. Every year America tries to catch up. Africa moves further ahead. Food isn't just food. It's diplomacy, negotiation, leverage. And with Africa controlling the world's largest reserve of arable land and rapidly becoming a global food supplier, the West is realizing something it never prepared for. You cannot pressure a continent that can feed itself and feed others. African nations are now in a position to demand better trade terms, reject exploitative agreements, block one-sided policies, build independent agricultural blocks, and shift supply away from Western markets for the first time in modern history. Africa controls something the West desperately needs. And Washington knows, this time, Africa isn't giving it away. The geopolitical landscape is reorganizing around a simple fact: food is the new oil. And Africa is sitting on the world's biggest reserve. Countries once overlooked are becoming central players: Rwanda, Morocco, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, Senegal. Investment is flowing in. Trade routes are shifting. Infrastructure is expanding. Africa is negotiating from a position of strength, and the world is adjusting to the new reality. The global South isn't just rising, it's leading. The aftermath of America's farming collapse is not just an agricultural story. It's a power story, a geopolitical realignment. America lost control. Africa took advantage. And the balance of global power is changing. Not in 2050. Not someday. Right now. For the first time, Africa's agricultural strength is not a dream, not a prediction. It is the emerging foundation of a new world order. A world where Africa is not waiting for permission. A world where Africa is shaping the future. A world where Africa holds the leverage. And Washington can't stop it. In the end, this story isn't just about farming. It's not just about crops, land, or weather. It's about power. For more than a century, America used agriculture as one of its greatest weapons to influence nations, control markets, and shape global politics. But that era is ending. The U.S. farming system is collapsing from within, weakened by aging farmers, shrinking land, corporate takeover, environmental pressure, and foreign dependence. And while Washington struggles to revive what it lost, Africa is rising into the space America left behind. African nations are expanding production, exporting more food than ever, building new infrastructure, controlling the world's last major reserves of fertile land, and negotiating from a position of unprecedented strength. What began as America's internal crisis has become Africa's global opportunity. And today, the world is witnessing something that was never supposed to happen this fast. Africa is no longer waiting for the future. Africa is the future. America can try to rebuild. It can try to catch up. It can try to reclaim what it once controlled. But the truth is simple. The balance has shifted. The food power has changed hands. And a new chapter in global history has already begun, written not in Washington, but across the farms, fields, and fertile lands of Africa. This is not the West's story anymore. This is Africa's moment. And the world is finally paying attention.